I pressed the sleeve of my silk blouse flat against my arm, smoothing out a wrinkle that no one but me would ever notice. The city skyline shimmered beyond the glass wall of my office, sunlight bouncing off steel towers, reminding me just how far I'd come from the tiny house where I grew up. My assistant had just dropped off my afternoon coffee, its steam curling into the air, mingling with the faint scent of my jasmine perfume. Everything in this space felt composed, curated, earned. And then my phone buzzed. At first, I ignored it, just another email, another meeting request, another calendar reminder. But when I turned it over, I froze. The name glowing on the screen wasn't a client, or a friend, or even an old colleague. It was my mother. I stared at it, my chest tightening with a mix of irritation and something heavier, something I didn't like to name. We hadn't spoken much lately, at least not beyond polite check-ins. The last time we'd really talked, she'd made it clear she didn't need me, that they didn't need me. But here she was calling in the middle of my workday. I let it ring once. Twice. My hand hovered. Finally, I swiped to answer. Her voice came through the line, smaller than I remembered. Maddie, we need to talk. It's about money. And just like that, the careful wall I'd built around my life began to tremble. The sound of my mother's voice pulled me backward in time, back to a night I thought I'd buried. I was 22 then, fresh out of college, clutching a folder of plans I had poured my soul into. We sat at the kitchen table of our modest little home in Ohio, the smell of my father's after-dinner coffee still lingering in the air. I remember how my palms sweated against the folder as I slid it across to them. Mom, Dad, I got an offer, I'd said, my voice trembling but proud. It's a marketing firm in Chicago. And the salary, it's good. I could help with bills. Maybe even pay off some of the mortgage. I expected smiles, maybe tears of pride. Instead, my father leaned back, folding his arms across his chest. His jaw tightened in that way that meant he'd already decided something. You don't need to worry about our bills, Madison, he said flatly. We raised you. We'll manage. You focus on your little job. My little job. I felt the sting of those words cut deeper than he realized. My mother nodded in agreement, though her eyes flickered with something softer. Concern, maybe fear. Sweetheart, you're too young to be thinking about our problems. We don't need your money. But it wasn't just about money. It was about being seen, being taken seriously. I tried again, my voice rising, desperate. This isn't just a little job. It's a chance. I can finally give something back. Don't push me away. My father's hand slammed against the table, rattling my water glass. I said no. We don't want your help. End of discussion. The silence that followed pressed against my chest like a weight. My hands shook in my lap as I swallowed the lump in my throat. That night, I sat on my bed staring at a small leather notebook my grandmother had given me before she passed. On the first page, in her looping script, she'd written, "Don't wait for permission to live your life, Maddie. Build it." I ran my fingers over the words, tears streaking down my cheeks. If my own parents couldn't see me, maybe it was time to see myself. 2 weeks later, I packed a single suitcase, tucked that notebook into my bag, and boarded a bus bound for Chicago. I didn't look back. Chicago wasn't kind to me at first. The city was loud, unforgiving, its winters biting straight through my thrift store coat. I rented a tiny studio with peeling paint and a radiator that clanked louder than my thoughts at night. Some evenings, I would curl up on the squeaky futon with nothing but instant noodles and my grandmother's notebook, whispering her words to myself like a prayer. Build it, Maddie. By day, I worked as an assistant at the marketing firm that had hired me. My job wasn't glamorous, printing pitch decks, fetching coffee, double-checking calendars. But I watched. I learned. I stayed later than anyone, memorizing presentations, listening to how senior managers handled clients. I scribbled everything in that notebook until its pages bent under the weight of ink and ambition. Still, there were nights I doubted myself. Nights I stood in front of the bathroom mirror with puffy eyes and cracked lips, asking, what if Dad was right? What if this is just a little job? Then one evening, While carrying a stack of reports back to the office, a senior account director named Rachel Myers stopped me. Rachel was the kind of woman who commanded a room, tall, confident, her lipstick never smudged even after 12-hour days. "You've got good instincts, Hayes," she said, tapping the margin notes I'd made on one of her drafts. "Don't just fetch papers. Start pitching ideas." It was the first time someone in that world really saw me. From then on, I lived in two realities. To my parents on our rare phone calls, I was just managing okay. I let them believe I rented a plain little place and kept things modest. I never mentioned Rachel's mentorship, the promotions, the late nights that turned into early mornings when my campaigns actually worked. I remember the thrill of my first win, securing a small client who later grew into a major account. I treated myself to a real dinner that night, steak and a glass of red wine at a restaurant where no one knew I used to count quarters for groceries. Each milestone stacked on the last. A raise. Then another. Then a title. Senior strategist. I bought better clothes, shoes that didn't blister my feet after a commute, and eventually a condo overlooking Lake Michigan with floor-to-ceiling windows that felt like a promise fulfilled. But I kept it hidden. On holidays, when I visited Ohio, I drove a rental that looked average. I wore understated clothes. I let them think I was still just getting by. Maybe a part of me feared they'd only see dollar signs if they knew. Or maybe I still craved something deeper, acceptance that had nothing to do with money. Yet, every night, as I kicked off my heels and set my bag down on the sleek glass table of my living room, I felt the quiet hum of victory. I was building something, piece by piece, step by step. And no one, not even my parents, had any idea just how far I had come. The call from my mother replayed in my head all night. Her voice had been tight, weary. "It's about money." For years, I had braced myself for this moment, half dreading it, half expecting it. Still, when my parents arrived in Chicago 2 weeks later, bags in hand, I felt my chest tighten. They hadn't visited me once since I'd moved here. Not once. I had offered to send a car for them, but true to form, my father refused. They showed up in a modest taxi, stepping onto the sidewalk outside my building, squinting up at the gleaming glass tower that stretched into the sky. I watched from the lobby as their faces shifted. Confusion. Awe. A touch of discomfort. My mother whispered, "Maddie, you live here?" I smiled faintly, stepping forward in my tailored blazer and heels. "Yes, Mom. I do." We rode the elevator in silence. My father's jaw was clenched, his hand gripping the rail like the motion of rising 30 floors was something he didn't trust. When the door slid open to my floor, the hallway stretched sleek and quiet, a stark contrast to the creaky old carpet back home. Then I opened the door to my condo. They stepped inside slowly, eyes sweeping over the polished hardwood floors, the abstract paintings, the shelves lined with books and framed photographs. Sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a golden glow over the room. Beyond the glass, Lake Michigan shimmered, endless and blue. My father muttered something under his breath. My mother, wide-eyed, pressed a hand to her chest. "Madison, this is beautiful." I guided them toward the living room. On the coffee table sat a silver frame holding a photo of Rachel and me at a company gala, laughing in gowns that shimmered under the lights. Next to it, a crystal award engraved with my name, Madison Hayes, Senior Marketing Director of the Year. My father froze. His eyes locked on the award. "Director?" he asked, his voice rough. I met his gaze evenly. "Yes. I've been running my own team for the last 2 years." Silence stretched heavy between us. My mother lowered herself onto the couch, her fingers tracing the edge of a throw pillow as if grounding herself. Finally, my father spoke again, quieter this time. "You never said." "You never asked," I replied. The words hung in the air, sharp but true. I sat across from them, crossing my legs, my blouse catching the sunlight. For years, I had hidden pieces of my life, waiting for this very moment. And now, with their eyes on me, I let it all spill out. I worked my way up. I took every opportunity Rachel gave me, and I built something from nothing. I didn't just survive in Chicago, I thrived. This condo, this career, everything you see here, I did it without your help, without your approval. While you were telling me not to worry about your bills, I was learning how to pay my own. And now you're here, because you need me. My mother's eyes filled with tears. She whispered, "We didn't know." "No," I said softly, though my voice didn't waver. "You didn't want to know." For once, even my father had nothing to say. His pride, the wall he'd built brick by brick, was cracking before my eyes. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. "So, let's be honest. You came here because you need help, and I need to decide what that means." The room was quiet, the weight of years pressing down on all of us. But for the first time, I wasn't the one trembling. I was the one in control. My father shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his fingers drumming against his knee. For a man who had always spoken with authority, silence seemed to weigh heavier on him than any debt. My mother sat with her shoulders slightly hunched, twisting her wedding ring as if hoping it could rewind time. I let them sit in that silence for a moment longer before I spoke. "I'm not here to punish you," I began, my voice calm but steady. "I'm not going to throw everything you said back in your faces, though I'd be lying if I said it didn't hurt me deeply when you refused my help back then. But if I help you now, it has to be different." My father lifted his eyes, wary. "Different how?" "Different," I said, leaning forward, as in no more dismissing me. No more treating my career like a little job. If I'm going to support you, then I need honesty, respect, and effort in return. This isn't a one-way street. My mother's lips trembled. "Maddie, we were just trying to protect you." "Protect me?" I cut in gently but firmly. "By belittling me? By refusing to let me stand with you? That wasn't protection. That was control. And I won't live under that anymore." The words surprised even me. They had been sitting in my chest for years, waiting for this moment to be freed. I softened my tone. "If I cover your mortgage, I want you both to make changes. Dad, you need to finally let go of that pride that keeps you from asking for help until it's too late. Mom, you need to stop pretending everything is fine, just to keep the peace. I want you both to be real with me. No more walls." They exchanged glances, a mix of shame and vulnerability passing between them. "And there's something else," I added, folding my hands. "I'll help with money, yes, but I don't want to just hand it over while you keep living the same way. If I do this, I want you to use this chance to build a healthier life. No more ignoring doctor's appointments because you don't want the bill. No more putting off opportunities because you're afraid to fail. If I'm stepping in, it's not just to keep the lights on. It's to give you a chance to actually live better." My father's shoulders sagged. For the first time, I saw the man not as the unyielding figure from my childhood, but as someone tired, someone scared. "And if we don't agree?" he asked quietly. I met his eyes without blinking. "Then you'll have to find another way. Because I won't go back to being the girl whose voice didn't matter. Those days are over." The silence that followed wasn't heavy this time. It was cleansing, like the pause after a storm. Finally, my mother reached across the table, her hand trembling as she placed it over mine. "We'll try, Maddie. We'll do better. We want you in our lives, not just your money." For the first time in years, I believed her. The weeks that followed felt different. For the first time, my parents didn't treat me like a child or a stranger. They only called in emergencies. My father, stubborn as he was, actually picked up the phone to update me on things, small things, like how he was patching up the porch steps or how the neighbor's dog kept digging holes in the yard. My mother started sending me recipes again, little handwritten notes tucked into cards that smelled faintly of her lavender lotion. It wasn't perfect. Old habits don't disappear overnight. But there was effort, and for me, that was enough to start healing. One Sunday afternoon, I sat in my Chicago condo with sunlight spilling across my coffee table. My grandmother's notebook lay open in front of me, its pages worn thin from years of my scribbles. I had added so much to it since that first lonely night. Campaign ideas, motivational quotes, even doodles from moments of stress. But on the first page, her words remained as clear as ever. Don't wait for permission to live your life, Maddie. Build it. I traced the letters with my finger, realizing how far I had come from the scared 22-year-old who once begged her parents to see her worth. They hadn't, but I had learned to see it myself. And in the end, that had made all the difference. Now, as I looked at my parents' names on my phone's contact list, saved under Mom and Dad, just like always, I felt something I hadn't in years: peace. Not because everything was fixed, but because I finally knew I had the power to choose what my life looked like. Helping them now didn't make me small. It didn't erase the years of hurt. Instead, it proved that I had grown into someone strong enough to give, without losing myself in the process. I closed the notebook and leaned back, watching the light shift across the lake outside my window. My parents once refused my help. I whispered into the quiet room, my voice steady, certain. But now they depend on my salary. And this time, it's on my terms.